Ranskoor of Kolos. Ranskoor of Kolos. Ranskoor of Kolos. Ranskoor of Kolos. Raccoons and clowns. No. And here we are, the finale of the season 11. We say finale, but you know, we got the New Year's special coming up in a couple weeks. Can we really count this as a finale? Honestly, I kind of don't. But they're saying it is, so I guess we'll call it that. So yes, the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos. Compared to other finales, which honestly always feel kind of momentous, kind of big, like it actually always seems to move the mythos in new and grandiose directions, this one feels a lot more collected by comparison. This one feels a little bit more personal, which, as I guess in keeping with the rest of the season. And to this one's credit, I remember making complaints in some of my prior reviews saying that there never felt like there was any kind of connective thread when it came to any kind of story arc. Now, I will say that's been kind of a virtue for this season because we don't feel like we have to use the story arc as something of a crutch. The stories can feel like they can have their own identity. They don't feel like they're beholden to be part of this connective tissue. And there's a gift and a curse to that. This whole season kind of rode that wave with some grace. All leading up to this one episode, which effectively meant that the first episode and the last episode bookend. Now, in order to get into this, I'm going to have to get into the big bad's the Patang. You didn't buy that, did you? The big bad of the season, of course, is the return of Tim Shaw. You know, he was the one villain, you know, that was new to the series that Chibnall created that made the strongest impression. And actually, I'm kind of glad that I kind of held back talking about this until now because I think this is where I think it really shined the best. I've been saying this is probably still, to this day, I'm still going to say this is the best looking season of Doctor Who I've seen, period. Production design has been consistently on the money. The special effects are incredible. The CGI work is top notch in many regards, and I think it shines the best in this one. And of course, Doctor Who has had a very long seasoned history with rock quarries, and this one is one that, and they've used them pretty frequently in the new series too, but I feel like this episode really used them to their peak potential. I mean, the whole episode of them walking up to the big floating fortress, it feels atmospheric, it feels foreboding. I mean, there felt like this sense of hostile territory as you kept walking through it. And it was actually pretty wicked leading up to this point. So there was this nice buildup of anticipation. And then, of course, you had Mark Addy. You know, most people know him as Robert Baratheon. Of course, I know him as Dave from The Full Monty. Actually plays a great supporting character here. Not a substantial character. He's not like on a par with the characters from Demons of the Punjab. He's not even on a par with the characters from Kerblam. But nevertheless, he still gives able support, and his motivations are clear. And he does have a very compelling path, coming from the fact that when you first meet him, he's slightly loopy because of the influence of the planet. And very gradually, you see him get back his wits, and he becomes a really strong ally throughout the span of the episode. So, good support. The major win, I gotta say, with this one is that now a lot of people have been comparing the MacGuffin in this one to the Stolen Earth, and it is applicable, but honestly, this is where I'm gonna have to let my classic fan flag fly. I was feeling a lot more of, probably one of my favorite of the Tom Baker era, the Pirate Planet. This was feeling a lot more like the Pirate Planet, in that there's a kind of a roguish villain stealing planets and compressing them into like just, you know, baseball size and putting them on display. It was a lot like that. And not only in that regard, but they even kind of utilized some of the science of it, where the whole idea of millions of tons of compressed rock placed together side by side, and the Doctor points out this is not a good idea. If these things are let loose, it could basically cause a massive interstellar event. And this episode actually points that out, and I gotta say, massive kudos to it. And because I had that episode in my mind during the course of this one, I was biting my nails because I was like, I know what could happen if any of these little crystalline stasis pods were to break, and even more so because the first time we see them, we don't know what they are, and the Doctor's been schlepping one around with bombs attached. And I was like, bad predicament. So there was a nice sense of tension there, and when you find out what they are, immediately the stakes explode. And I really dug that. You think that the episode's going to be like par for the course of the rest of the season, where the stakes are more personal. I thought it was going to be more collected, more focused on the main characters, particularly when you find out that Tim Shaw is the big bad. But then when you find out that he's been at this for a long time, and the fact that he's manipulated and taken control of two close to very powerful telekinetic beings. I'm going to say telekinetic. If I don't say that, we're going to be calling it Doctor Who's version of the Force, because that's what I'll say the Ucks are capable of. And it's a very impressive feat, don't get me wrong, and they're very fascinating life forms. And the show does a really good job showing off their abilities. And I gotta say, it was a good move having Tim Shaw bookend this season, because we have the aforementioned knowledge of him from beforehand, and remember what a little slimy prick he was in the beginning there. Then to see what could happen when you give him almost a godlike ability to create his own world around him, and the fact that he's able to manipulate them to worship him really makes him a much stronger villain. And I gotta say, I love the way it resolves for him. In a way, it's kind of like where they left Davros at the end of Destiny of the Daleks. It's kind of a cool spot. I'll try to be cagey on that, but I will say his resolution relates to Graham. Though there is not a major story arc, there's no Torchwood, there's no Bad Wolf, there's no Mr. Saxon running through here, there's no Crack. The consistent arc through the season has been the characters themselves and the paths they go on. Now, of course, Graham has definitely one of the biggest ones, a lot of it having to do with the grief of losing Grace and the fact that he's traveling with the Doctor in a way to just kind of, as a coping mechanism. And that has been ever present. It was definitely a smart move to have It Takes You Away be the episode that leads into this, because it reminds us that he's still grieving. And people are getting on Ryan now, saying that he doesn't have much of an arc. I'm like, guys, go back and watch the beginning of the season. He still has a major arc relating to him, and the fact that he himself doesn't really feel like he has anybody. The whole thing was about the fact that he felt distant from Graham. He never really accepted him as his grandfather. And after Grace died, he felt like he had nobody. And throughout the span of the season, you saw him very gradually bonding with Graham, and we finally get that comes to a head in this episode, and it was great. I mean, I love the end of It Takes You Away, where he finally was willing to accept him as his grandfather, but this was a next step. And there's a pivotal moment with Graham in this episode, and Ryan is there at present to finally show how much he has come close he's become with Graham over the span of the season. So Ryan's arc is a lot more subtler than people are giving it credit to, and if you're noticing it and if you're paying attention to it all the way through and it comes to this head, it's fantastic. Yaz, of course, only had like a couple of spotlight segments, and I'll say she's the one who I think, could probably benefit from a bit more development down the line, but at the same time, though, I kind of just like a companion who's a stalwart. In a way, if you were to deconstruct and compare this TARDIS team with maybe, say, the original, she is the Ian character. Because, let's face it, Ian Chesterton didn't really have much in the way of depth himself, but the one thing we could always rely on him to be is a good foil for the Doctor. Not just a foil, but maybe even just a partner, confidant, just someone who can always be on hand to help out the Doctor, where the Doctor can be good with the smarty bits. She can be on hand either to assist or even to defend. The main thing she's always wanted was to be extraordinary, because where she was as a cop wasn't really setting her up to be that. She was doing mundane jobs with parking disputes. Whereas here, she's following the Doctor, and a lot of times in the series, she's always tagging along with the Doctor, and always saying the right thing, always asking the right questions, and always being on hand, and always being the first person to sympathize, and always being the first person to to give their heart out to someone who may be suffering or someone who's in need. And that's something that I think no one gave her credit for, particularly in the last episode. And I feel like that's present in her interactions with not just the Doctor, but with the Ucks. And I felt that. Now, it all may be indicating the fact that Yaz just may not be a substantial character at all. But at the same time, though, I kind of like a character who's just a stalwart, who you can just rely on to be a stalwart. And that's good for me. I mean, hopefully in time they can find some new ways to make her interesting. Like, honestly, it would be kind of fun to see what would happen if her family got wise to what's going on with her life. That might add some fun, because her family were established and they were a fun set. So we might get more there. So we'll see. I mean, again, we got the New Year's special come along down the road. Leaving it right here as it is, I was pleased, and I guess you could say, given my low expectations, again, with Chibnall as the writer, I'll still maintain he still was not my favorite choice to run the show. I will say, given the low expectations I had, this actually went beyond my expectations. So this was a really fun, very compelling finale, and I dug it. And where I stand on the season as a whole, I guess I'll save that for when we do the New Year's special. What did you all think of the Battle of Ranskoor Kolos? I got it! Leave it all in the comments below. And for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click, thou shalt be served.